It began with a look. The kind of look that lingers, too heavy to be casual yet too fleeting to be called a confession. I felt it from across the room, sharp as a spark catching dry wood, and when my eyes found hers, it was like the air shifted. Her name was Eliza. Married. Untouchable. At least, that's what I thought the moment I saw the gold band glinting on her finger and the tall, distracted man who moved around her like he was tethered to his phone instead of her presence. We were at a charity gala, a glittering hall full of chandeliers, laughter that sounded rehearsed, and glasses of champagne no one really enjoyed. I hadn't wanted to come, but business associates had insisted. I expected nothing more than dull speeches and plastic smiles. And then there was her. Eliza wore a black dress that hugged her curves like silk clinging to the wind. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be, her body carried it, and her confidence made it art. Her hair framed her face in waves, her lips painted a shade that promised secrets, and when her eyes landed on me, something unspoken passed between us. I should have looked away. She should have too. But neither of us did. Instead, her lips curved just slightly, a smile only I was meant to see. My chest tightened with something I hadn't felt in years, anticipation. Later, when fate, or maybe desire, pushed us together at the bar, I caught the faintest trace of her perfume. Vanilla, smoke, and something darker, something like hunger. "You don't look like you want to be here," she said softly, tilting her glass with the kind of grace that comes naturally to women who are always being watched. I smiled, leaning just a little closer. "Neither do you." Her laugh was low, intimate, like a whisper under sheets. She shifted, brushing against me as though the bar wasn't wide and empty enough for two people. We talked about nothing, the wine, the boring speeches, the way everyone in the room seemed to be pretending they mattered more than they did. And yet, each word between us felt like a carefully laid thread, weaving a tension neither of us dared acknowledge aloud. I noticed her eyes drift, toward my lips when I spoke, down my neck when I leaned close to hear her better. And once, when our hands reached for our glasses at the same time, her skin grazed mine. It was deliberate. I felt the electricity. The evening ended with her leaving on her husband's arm, but not before she touched me lightly on the wrist. Just a brush. Just enough to make my pulse leap. Just enough to let me know she had felt it too. That night, I lay awake, the ghost of her perfume clinging to my memory, replaying every smile, every glance, every accidental touch. I didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. It was 2 weeks before I saw Eliza again. 2 weeks of restless nights and wandering thoughts, of wondering if the electricity between us had been real or if I'd only imagined it. But then, one evening, a message arrived on my phone. "Are you free for coffee?" It was simple. Harmless on the surface. But I knew better. Coffee was never just coffee when it came from a woman whose eyes had traced my lips in a crowded room. We met at a quiet cafe tucked away on a corner street, the kind of place where no one paid attention to anyone else. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, stirring a cup she hadn't yet touched. When she looked up and saw me, something unguarded flickered in her expression, relief, maybe even longing. "You came," she said, smiling as if she hadn't been sure I would. "I wanted to," I admitted. We talked for hours. About books, art, the kind of music that breaks your heart. About her work, her husband, the small details of a life that seemed perfect but wasn't. There was a softness in her when she spoke, a loneliness I recognized. "My marriage isn't bad," she said at one point, fingers tightening around her cup. "It's just empty. Like living inside a beautiful house that hasn't felt like home in years." I didn't know what to say, so I reached across the table and brushed her hand with mine. It was a small gesture, but it broke something open. Her breath hitched, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she didn't pull away. After that, coffee turned into dinner. Dinner into late-night walks. And late-night walks into moments that hovered on the edge of something we both knew we shouldn't want but couldn't stop reaching for. One night, after a rainstorm, we found ourselves standing beneath a streetlight, the city quiet around us. She was shivering slightly, her hair damp and clinging to her neck. I offered her my jacket, and when she slipped it on, our hands brushed again. This time, I didn't look away. "Eliza," I whispered, my voice trembling with everything I hadn't dared to say. She stepped closer, her breath warm against my cheek. "I think about you," she confessed, her words barely more than a breath. "More than I should." My heart raced. Then stopped thinking. And then she kissed me. Soft at first, tentative, like a question she was afraid to ask. But when I kissed her back, everything changed. It was desperate, hungry, a release of every glance, every brush of skin, every sleepless night. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Then why does it feel so right?" I asked. She didn't answer. But the way she leaned into me again told me everything I needed to know. Her message lingered in my mind all day, teasing me with possibilities I shouldn't entertain. Eliza was married. That fact echoed in my head like a warning bell. But desire has a way of silencing reason, and when she asked if we could meet again, I didn't hesitate. We chose someplace discreet, a quiet wine bar on the edge of the city, dimly lit, filled with strangers who weren't watching us. She arrived wrapped in a beige coat, her hair pulled back, her lips painted a softer shade than before. She looked nervous, but beneath the nerves was that same spark I'd seen at the gala, the one that made my body hum with anticipation. "You came," I said as she slid into the booth across from me. "I shouldn't have," she whispered, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "But I couldn't stay away." Her honesty disarmed me. The tension between us was sharp, the kind of energy that builds until it has no choice but to break. We talked again, about music, about how she hated pretending to enjoy the circles her husband moved in, about little things that didn't matter but made her laugh. Every time she laughed, I found myself leaning closer, wanting to drown in the sound. At one point, I reached across the table and brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered at her cheek, warm against her skin. She froze, eyes locked on mine, lips parted as though she wanted to say something but couldn't. "Eliza," I whispered. Her hand lifted, hesitant at first, then sure, resting lightly on mine. The heat of her touch shot through me, and for a long moment, we just stayed like that, hands tangled, gazes locked, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. Finally, she moved, sliding out of the booth. My heart thundered as she came to my side, sitting close enough that our thighs pressed together. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let her fingers slip between mine, holding me in the dark like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Do you know how dangerous this is?" she asked, her voice trembling with both fear and desire. "Yes," I breathed. "But I don't care." Her eyes flicked to my lips. Slowly, carefully, she leaned in, her breath warm against my mouth. But just before our lips touched, she pulled back, her chest rising and falling quickly. "Not here," she whispered. It was agony, that stolen almost kiss. But the way she clung to my hand as we walked out together told me everything. It wasn't if, it was when. And when came sooner than either of us had planned. The ride back to my apartment was charged with silence. Neither of us spoke, yet every glance, every brush of her knee against mine in the back seat felt louder than words. She kept her hands folded neatly in her lap, her wedding band catching the streetlights, a constant reminder of what we were crossing into. And yet, when I reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. She squeezed it. Hard. When we stepped inside, I shut the door behind us, and suddenly, the world outside no longer existed. She stood in the middle of my living room, her coat still wrapped around her body, her chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. For a moment, she looked like she might run. Then her eyes found mine, and I knew she wasn't going anywhere. I moved toward her slowly, giving her space to change her mind. She didn't. Instead, she let me take her coat from her shoulders, revealing the deep red dress beneath, one that clung to her body like it had been made for this moment. "Eliza," I whispered, my hand brushing her arm. She trembled, but her voice was steady. "Kiss me." I didn't need to be told twice. Our lips met in a rush of heat and urgency, the kiss soft at first, then hungry, desperate, like all the days of restraint had finally broken free. Her hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, while mine slid down her back, memorizing every curve, every line. She tasted of wine and something sweeter, something entirely her. Each kiss deepened, pulling us into a world where nothing else mattered. I pressed her against the wall, her breath catching as I trailed kisses down her neck, feeling the wild flutter of her pulse beneath my lips. God, she whispered, her fingers clutching at me. I've wanted this. I didn't even know how much. We stumbled toward the bedroom, laughter breaking through the haze of desire when she nearly tripped on her heels. I pushed her gently onto the bed, and she looked up at me with eyes that burned, eyes that told me she was ready to forget the world outside these four walls. Clothes became a memory, discarded between stolen kisses and gasps of want. My hands explored her like I'd been waiting my whole life for this moment, and the sounds she made, soft, breathless moans, the kind no one but me would ever hear, made my heart pound harder than my body's hunger. In the quiet between kisses, she whispered my name like it was a secret prayer. I kissed her deeper, slower, savoring every moment, every sigh, every arch of her body against mine. That night, Eliza didn't belong to her husband. She belonged to me. And as I held her trembling body close, I knew I was already in too deep. The morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and golden, spilling across the bed where Eliza lay curled against me. Her hair was a tangle across my pillow, her bare skin warm against mine. For a moment, it felt like something ordinary, like waking up beside a lover after a night that belonged only to us. My hand traced lazy circles along her shoulder, memorizing her softness, wishing time would stop right there. She stirred, opening her eyes slowly, the haze of sleep giving way to awareness. When she looked at me, she smiled, tired, tender, almost shy. It was the kind of smile that made my chest ache, because it wasn't lust I saw in it. It was affection. "Good morning," I whispered, brushing her cheek. "Good morning," she echoed, her voice low and husky. She pressed closer, hiding her face against my neck as though the world outside couldn't find her here. For a while, we stayed like that, tangled in sheets and silence, our bodies still humming from the night before. It felt fragile, like a bubble that would burst the moment we acknowledged the truth. But truth has a way of demanding space. "I can't stay long," she said finally, her words muffled against my skin. The knot in my stomach tightened. "I know." She pulled back then, her eyes searching mine, heavy with something unspoken. Guilt. Longing. Fear. I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have, her voice trailed off, but her fingers still rested on my chest, drawing small, absent circles as if she couldn't bring herself to let go. "You don't regret it," I said softly, not as a question but a statement. Her lips parted, then closed again. She sighed. "No. I don't regret it. But I don't know how to live with it either." I kissed her forehead, pulling her back into my arms. I didn't ask her to leave him. I didn't ask her to choose me. It was too soon, and maybe too much. All I could do was hold her, knowing that the moment she walked out that door, reality would claim her again. When she finally slipped out of bed, gathering her clothes in quiet haste, I sat there watching, memorizing the curve of her body in the morning light, the way she glanced back at me with eyes full of conflict. At the door, she paused. I'll call you." And then she was gone. The bed still smelled of her, the sheets still warm with her presence. I lay back down, closing my eyes, replaying every kiss, every gasp, every whispered word from the night before. I had her once. And I knew I wanted her again, no matter the cost. Her promise to call wasn't empty. 2 days later, my phone lit up with her name, and just the sight of it made my chest tighten. We met again, at first in hidden places, a corner booth in a dim cafe, a quiet walk in the park, a drive where she never told me the destination. Always secret, always cautious. But no matter where we were, the energy between us was undeniable. Every touch was stolen. Her fingers brushing mine under the table, her hand slipping into mine when the shadows were thick enough to hide us. The way she leaned into me when she laughed, her lips grazing my ear as though by accident. Each moment was a risk, yet we both kept coming back for more. Soon, stolen kisses replaced stolen touches. Quick, desperate, heart-racing kisses in the back of her car, in stairwells, once even in the hallway outside a hotel room we never booked because the danger of being caught was too great. Every time we parted, she would whisper, "This is the last time." But her lips always found mine again. And then the last times became planned nights. Nights where she would come to me after he fell asleep. She'd slip into my apartment with trembling hands, already reaching for me as though she couldn't bear the weight. Our bodies knew each other now, familiar and yet always hungry, and every night felt like the first, wild, urgent, necessary. But it wasn't only physical. Between the kisses and tangled sheets came confessions. She told me how lonely her marriage felt, how unseen she was by the man who was supposed to know her best. How with me, she felt alive, desired, like she was more than a role she had been forced into. "You make me feel real," she whispered once, lying in my arms after another breathless night. Her tears dampened my shoulder, and I kissed her hair, holding her tighter, aching at the thought of the life she returned to each morning. I was falling. Deeply. Hopelessly. Every time she left, the emptiness in my bed grew heavier, but every time she came back, I forgot all the reasons I shouldn't love her. We built a world in stolen hours, in hidden glances, in secret messages that lit up my phone at midnight. A world that wasn't built to last, but one that felt more real than anything else. And yet, in the back of my mind, one truth lingered: she still went home to him. Every night she wasn't with me, she was with her husband. It was the thorn buried inside the rose. And sooner or later, it was going to bleed us both. Love has a way of demanding more than you're ready to give. What started as stolen hours, heated whispers, and secret touches began to feel like something bigger, something that needed space to breathe. But Eliza's life wasn't built for breathing. It was built on appearances, on promises she had made years before, on a marriage that looked perfect to everyone but her. The more time we spent together, the harder it became for her to leave. Some nights, she lingered at my door, her hand pressed to my cheek as though she could hold on to the moment longer if she just didn't let go. "I wish I could stay," she whispered one night, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Then stay," I pleaded, my voice breaking. Her lips trembled, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might. But then she shook her head, slipping away from my arms like water through my fingers. "It's not that simple." The cracks in our fantasy widened. Our messages grew sharper, our phone calls heavy with silence. She hated lying, yet she kept lying. I hated sharing her, yet I kept letting her go. We were both caught in a web of want and guilt, pulling each other tighter, suffocating but unable to stop. One evening, she came to me shaking. She dropped her bag on the floor, pacing my apartment like a caged animal. "He knows something," she blurted, her voice trembling. "He keeps asking where I've been. I don't know how much longer I can hide this." I pulled her into my arms, but she pushed me away, her frustration spilling out. "You don't understand. If this comes out, everything I built, my marriage, my family's respect, it'll all shatter." "And what about us?" I asked, my chest tight, my voice louder than I meant it to be. "Do we only exist in the dark? Am I supposed to keep being your secret forever?" Her silence was an answer I didn't want to hear. She looked at me with eyes full of pain, of love, of fear. "I love being with you," she whispered finally. "But I can't lose everything else." The words cut deep, sharper than any rejection I'd ever known. I wanted to scream, to demand she choose me, to beg her to see that what we had was worth more than the hollow life she returned to every night. But instead, I just stood there, watching her tears fall, knowing the truth I had tried to ignore: this love might burn bright, but it wasn't built to last. That night, she didn't stay. She kissed me like it was goodbye, though she didn't say the word. And when the door closed behind her, I felt the world collapse into silence. I didn't know if she'd ever come back. But deep down, I already feared the answer. Days passed without a call, without a message, without even the smallest sign that she was thinking of me. My phone stayed silent, and each hour of silence felt heavier, like a weight pressing on my chest. I told myself she was busy, that she would come back like she always did. But somewhere deep inside, I knew. When her name finally flashed on my screen, my heart leapt, and then sank as soon as I heard her voice. It was soft, steady, the kind of voice someone uses when they've already made a decision. "We can't do this anymore," she said. I sat in silence, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. "Eliza. I love what we had," she whispered, her words trembling. "But I have to go back to my life. To my marriage. To the world that expects me to be his wife, not," her voice broke. "Not yours." Her words sliced through me, leaving wounds too deep for bandages. I wanted to beg, to tell her I could be her life, that she didn't have to settle for a love that made her invisible. But I heard the fear in her voice, the chains of duty and expectation clamped so tightly around her heart. So instead, I said nothing. That night, I lay in the same bed where she had once tangled herself around me, where she had whispered my name with trembling lips, where her body had belonged to me if only for a fleeting moment. The sheets still carried the ghost of her perfume, but they were cold now, empty. In the days that followed, I saw her once more, at another event, standing beside her husband. She smiled, laughed, played her role perfectly, but when her eyes flicked to mine across the room, they carried a sadness only I would recognize. For a moment, time froze. I wanted to run to her, to shake her, to remind her of the nights she spent in my arms, of the way she confessed she had never felt more alive. But then she looked away, her fingers tightening around her husband's arm as though she had chosen her place and sealed it shut. That was the moment I understood. She had gone back. Back to her husband, back to the life that was easier to explain, safer to keep. She had given me her body, her laughter, her heart in stolen hours, but not her forever. And yet, even now, when the nights are long and I close my eyes, I can still feel her beside me. I can still taste her kiss, hear her whisper my name in the dark. She may have gone back to him, but a part of her will always stay with me. And a part of me will always belong to her.